Hello and welcome to Health Matters ACTV 20, now at our new studio at Atwood Video Productions. And we are excited to be here in this new spacious recording studio, and I'm sure now that you can see that I'm actually a lot older than my previous shows, it's due to the video quality here. Actually, I wanted to welcome a guest today that is exciting to me because she represents an area of healing that I think is going to help all of you understand how you can get your goals met a little easier. And I would like to introduce Laura Linsteadt. Laura, welcome
Hello.
to our show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I'm so loving this work with the Scalar Heart Connection and helping people to really connect with their own hearts, and actually for me to connect with mine.
Now, full disclosure,
Okay.
I have had a session with Laura, and I find it hard to explain. She's going to do a much better job, but I'm going to give you a metaphor that helped me a little bit to understand what I went through. Many years ago, I used to teach sailing. But in order to teach sailing, you have to learn a lot about the wind and sails and leverage and physics. So I took lessons, and I learned that you can actually sail into the wind and sail really fast, which sounds sort of opposite of what should happen. But if you understand that, you know that you can do certain things that common sense or your dichotomous brain would say, no, you can't do that. So with the Scalar Heart Connection session that we had, I found that helping me understand a direction and how to more fine-tune that and understand the physics of that allowed me to make some progress in an area that I felt I was a little stuck. So with that metaphor, I wanted to come back and ask Laura a little bit about herself. So if you can tell us, a bit about your background, and then we'll get into what the Scalar Heart Connection is.
Okay. Yes, I feel like I've spent a lifetime in healing work. I actually went to college because I wanted to study dance, but I also wanted to study it in a way where I was actually learning dance therapy, dance and movement to use as therapy. And I worked with young children. I actually worked in some psychiatric hospitals with it. And I became a massage therapist so that I could learn about the body and all of the organs and systems. I also learned about Eastern medicine and all the energy meridians and organs and how our organs hold emotion. And then I studied things like holographic repatterning. And when I found Scalar Heart Connection, it just felt like it was very streamlined to help people really achieve what they wanted very quickly.
I see. So when you experienced Scalar Heart Connection for yourself, was it because you had some sessions, or did you read about it and say, I'm in, I want to study this, and then you went from there? What was your experience? How was your introduction to that?
I actually had some sessions myself personally, and I experienced this profound connection to my heart, to my body, and kind of an integration of actually all of me into what I really wanted to create with my life and with my heart. And so I really felt like this was something I could bring to my clients and to my family and friends that would really help them to create what they wanted to in their life out of the stress and the challenges that they were facing.
I see. So we had discussed earlier about the heart connection, and that's taking the mind away from that just a little bit. Could you explain the difference between our cognition, our recognition of a stressor perhaps, and how our body really responds to that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking me, but how I explain Scalar Heart Connection is that it's a way to shift out of our head and this really active, often overactive brain and mind and into our hearts.
I see. Because
we often are trying to solve the challenges or the issues or the problems that we face from the very level that we've actually created the problem. And so what we want to do is to drop into this vast and infinite intelligence and interconnection and intuition of our heart.
Boy, you're right. I mean, our brains can get stuck in loops so easily, and often accepted, I guess, that we use a small percentage of our brain, which is the active thinking, logical part of our brains, but there's so much more that's connected to something else. And I guess research has also shown that we are able to sense things, perceive them, before the brain really has a chance to interpret them. That's sort of a survival instinct, is interpreting what's going on. But the sense that you have about things, like if a person walks into the room, you've never even talked to them, you have a sense of something, maybe their intention, maybe, I don't know, we call it their aura, but we can sense things like that. So what your scalar heart connection is doing is helping us with that part of our ability to sense and to know without our head getting in the way to obscure a path, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It often gets in the way of that. And there's wonderful illustrations of how we tap into that. They've been doing all this research at the Institute of Heart Math. In fact, they've done a study with participants where they connected their brains to a monitor, their hearts to a monitor, and they wanted to see how the brain and the heart responded and how they interacted. And they proceeded to show the participants images through slides of different images, say a field of flowers. It's like, a field of flowers. So then they would see that response in the brain and the heart. A car accident, and so then they'd see that in the brain and the heart. And what they began to see was that actually it was our heart that was responding first.
Right.
And it was sending information up to the brain. They actually then took that study. I mean, this was a fascinating study to me about the heart. They took that study and then they actually randomized the slides so that the participants and the person showing the slides didn't know the order of the slides. And then the other thing they did is they put a dark slide in between each of the images. And then they showed the participants that. So they'd bring up the dark slide, and they'd wait, and then they'd bring up the image. And as they went through this process, they began to see that in that dark slide, the heart already started responding and knew exactly what was coming next, and it was responding 6 to 7 seconds before the image showed up.
Right. Wow.
This is what our heart taps into. And often we find that happens. Our hearts know something way before our brain and our head.
It's lovely to know that some researchers have figured out how to measure that, because those of us who have had these experiences have a hard time explaining to people something that's difficult to see, touch, smell, or feel. But it's there, it's real. We know it is because we can see the results of that. So by tapping into the scalar heart, and I want you to explain scalar, because that I still don't quite understand that.
Okay.
But by tapping into the heart, you're giving us tools to become more powerful in our intention, because we don't have that part of our brain that says, I don't think you can do that. You can't do that. You've been told for years you're not good at that. Those recordings that would otherwise keep us from doing the things that we know we want to do or feel we should be able to do. So start with the scalar
Okay,
explanation.
great. That was a great lead-in. Thank you. The scalar is like a figure 8. And so it's actually two equal and opposite waves. They talk about this in quantum physics. When two equal and opposite waves come together, they thought that they canceled each other out. But what in fact is happening is that they're creating this really powerful energy field. They call it the field of potentiality. So that when we drop a seed into there of intention, it manifests. And actually, our circulatory system, how the blood flows through our heart and lungs, is a figure 8. It is continuously creating this scalar wave, this field of potentiality, so that when we drop our thoughts, our emotions, and often our unconscious intentions, this brain activity that says we can't do all these things, into there, we're constantly recreating that stress, really, the challenges that we're facing. We're constantly creating that. So the power is that with this process that we're getting to is being able to intentionally put in the seed of what is it that our hearts are really calling us to, what we're wanting to create in our relationships with ourselves, with our spouse, our child, in our work, in our health, whatever that is.
That's a fascinating prospect. I'm tempted to ask you about, is this helping the subconscious part of our body, our brain-body kind of connection? Is there hypnosis involved? Because I'm sure people are asking, well, that sounds like hypnosis to me, or that's like psychology, getting into the subconscious and trying to convince the part of the brain. Can you answer a little bit to that?
Yes, I would say yes, it is connecting with the subconscious. It's also, I think it's connecting the subconscious with the conscious to bring them more actively together, because I think a lot of our actions and reactions are coming from a very unconscious place. But it's connecting the two of them. And I'm trying to remember the other part of your question on there.
Well, looking at how the heart connection leads us to changing behaviors. In other words, is there a hypnosis suggestion, or is this is this something that the subconscious then takes and deals with separately? I'm a little unsure about that.
When you come to me for a session, we would get clear on what is the stressful challenge or issue that you're bringing. The very next thing that we do, once we're clear on that, is we would actually do a healing modality, which is this figure 8, where we're connecting our heart.
That's
and we're
what that
focusing.
Was about. I wondered about that.
We're focusing in on taking really deep breaths, closing our eyes, and we're connecting our heart, creating this scalar wave, this really strong intention of this scalar wave connecting our heart to our head and to our legs and our pelvis, connecting it to the rest of our body. And as we do that with the breath, we're actually shifting our brain waves into what we call a theta brainwave state. So it's not exactly hypnosis, but we are shifting the brain wave from that really active place into a theta state so that we can actually hear our heart. And this is a healing modality we use throughout the session, is that deep breathing with the figure 8.
Well, that makes so much sense. I didn't understand that to begin with, but in my own mind, I was thinking, well, I want to quiet that beta activity, which is the logical processing part of your brain, simply because I have some experience with meditation. So that was what I was thinking going through this.
Okay.
And I know, as you were saying, alpha, theta, delta waves, those are where we're more receptive to input that might conflict with some of our negative thoughts or our doubts that we have in the beta activity part of our brain.
Right, exactly. So
very interesting. But it's not exactly hypnosis, although you're taking the body into that quiet state to then find out more how the body, what it really wants, or what it really needs.
To really connect in with the what I call the voice of our higher self, which comes through our heart.
Very good.
Comes into our body and into our heart.
Now, I'm noticing, I haven't looked at your books yet, but I noticed you have some books that you brought with you, and the last name is the same as yours.
Right.
So could you tell us a little bit about these books?
Right. So it's a Scalar Heart Connection. If you want to know more information about it, it's actually my brother-in-law, Stephen Linsteadt, who's created the Scalar Heart Connection process. And this goes into detail as far as all of the different modalities and understanding that he brought together with the quantum healing codes, the solfeggio scale of sound frequencies for healing. He goes into depth. So in this book, he also has written a new book called The Heart of the Hero, where he talks about the process and how we actually, each of us, are on a hero's journey. And that hero's journey is our heart. So if you're interested to know more, definitely check these books out. You can go to my website, actually, and there's a link to these books.
Fantastic. That helps, I think, to give people some ideas about what they can expect. And so that leads me to what I wanted to ask next, which is what types of things do people typically contact you for? What are their issues and what are your goals with them? Some examples.
Right. Well, it's really interesting and fascinating to me because I've had people come to me from anything from feeling a lot of fear and apprehension around selling a condo and having to move to a new place.
Oh,
And that was very interesting to me, where once she went into the session and she listened to her heart guided her to shift into ease and surrender and acceptance. And by the end of the session, as she was leaving, she got a phone call from her realtor, and within a week, her condo was sold. And prior to that, the condo had been sitting there for months. So it's just the power of that shift of she was able to let it go and trust. So anything from that to, I had a woman come to see me who was having difficulty and stress in feeling disconnected from her husband and communication with him. So the session, was very powerful, and to help her to really see how to reconnect with him, and that it actually had to do with an earlier experience when she was 16, and how her mother and father had divorced and she moved away from her father. What happened is that she saw that not only did she disintegrate from her father physically, but she did it inside. She disintegrated from her masculine side. And that actually this difficulty with her husband was another way to heal.
I see.
To heal that actually within herself. So it's been like help with their business, wanting to move their business forward and feeling stuck in their work and creativity. I mean, actually pain in their body that's constant, like what is that about? And those have been very powerful.
I'm glad you brought that up. That is something that I've found in my practices in the past, that people who have had chronic pain, sometimes just drawing their attention through some of the emotional techniques that I've done, there's nothing physically wrong with them. It's just that they're holding, like you were saying, the organs can hold these emotions as well.
Yes, exactly. And the organs can refer to a specific area and create pain. And so, Right.
So many people, and I know that there's many techniques out there, and I've had quite a few guests on with experience with this, but you have sometimes, as a person, that whenever I do this, that results. You start to see patterns. The older you get, the more of these patterns become obvious. So, for example, whenever I get a little bit of money saved up, it seems like I'm back to zero. Whenever I get a certain level of success, I somehow sabotage myself. When I get into a relationship, after 3 months, something goes wrong. I mean, these are patterns. If people recognize them, there are ways to connect with what's really going on. There's little programs going on in the head. Sometimes putting that over here for a while, letting the heart connection, as you were saying, guide them, they can help to eliminate those patterns, or at least work with them to be able to move forward. I mean, that's important. We want to keep moving forward.
Yes, because the challenges are showing up because they're actually opportunities for us to grow.
Right.
They're opportunities for us to become aware of actually how we're disconnecting from who we really are, how we're disconnecting from our heart and each other, and that it is a way to grow into connection with ourselves and each other.
Correct.
So, and those patterns, they're just an opportunity to bring to our awareness and to choose differently. That's the whole beauty of this process, is to see, it's like bringing together the pieces of a puzzle, really. That's how I see this process. It's like the pieces of what is the pattern of how I've been stuck and holding myself back in whatever that is, and then what is the new kind of structure or sacred geometry that my heart is wanting to create to step fully into, my greater work, my fuller purpose, this loving relationship with myself and others. So all of that.
It reminds me of a quote that a famous author, I forget which one now, who said, most people want to see to believe, but in reality, to create movement in your life, you have to believe, then you'll see the result of that. So this is I think, a good example of how, believing in yourself, because there is that part of you that really doesn't have blocks. It's your desires, your passions, your goals. And it's great to have an opportunity to work with you and to find that there is something that, people don't have to go to hypnosis, or they don't have to go through psychoanalysis. That you have techniques that you can teach people.
Yes,
and I
exactly.
think that's important. So you have a website where people can go.
I do.
They can talk to you personally through that. Is there a link to get to connect with you? Or
Yes, they can email me, or there is a link there they can contact me. And so, shall I give my website now?
Yeah,
Would that
sure.
be good? So my website is actually embodyWholeness.net. embodyWholeness.net, and that's EMBODY, wholeness, WHOLENESS.net. And you can contact me there.
Great. Well, I would like to know, in fact, I'm sure our audience would like to know also, a little bit about the procedure. I mean, do I have to schedule 10 sessions to get something? Is there a number, a set number? Or how do you help people with a pattern or a program to help themselves? How do we know when we've got where we want to get?
Okay. Well, I like to talk to someone first before they actually come to a session to know what it is that they're wanting to create, what is their goal,
Right.
and how long that has been going on. It may, we often will set up a series of 4 sessions or 6 sessions, depending on what's happening for this person.
Right.
And how chronic it is,
Right.
how long it's been going on. And it's always surprising to me, too, that it can shift within a couple of sessions or even 1 session. The challenge is when it's a really ingrained pattern, there's layers to it.
Sure.
Is what I'm finding. It's a spiral. So we start on this outer spiral and we move in towards the center. And so we might come back to the same issue, but we definitely have changed. But we're learning more about what it is that our hearts are calling us to really shift into what we're wanting to create. So it often does take a few sessions.
And I'm imagining that I'm really into my head a lot. So I know that I'll question every time I do this. And I did the procedures. You gave me some homework, and I did my homework. But I kind of start off with thinking to myself, well, yeah, but what if? And and there was some doubt. And so I think I had to, as you were saying, put the drop in a number of times before that part of that questioning, that cognition part of my head just kind of said, let it go and see what happens here. And I think that was really a turning point for me. So I could see where maybe going through a series would help you not only maybe with one particular issue, but might open up other areas of your life that you can see, oh, well, it was my job that I was worried about because I kept sabotaging myself. But now I realize I'm sabotaging relationships, my money, a whole lot of my life. And so
they're so interconnected, yes.
They are, yeah. So it's hard to differentiate, I guess, the end point.
Yeah.
But the starting point's pretty easy. If you find that there's patterns that you reproduce and come back to, then that would be a good reason to get started. Well, what can you tell us a little bit, since we only have a couple minutes left, I wanted to find out if there's something that people can do at home to sort of ask themselves whether this might be appropriate for them. What would they have to believe, or what would they have to know, or what limits would they have to overcome just to make this work for them?
Well, I think first of all, there's a way in which they can familiarize themselves with the process. There is an Ask Your Heart app.
Really?
That they could get and download on their phone. Or they can actually go to the link on my website, which links to the Scalar Heart Connection website. And there's a small, what we call a shorter session, where you can actually access and ask with whatever challenge is happening, ask your heart. And go through the process, this short process, and to see how that feels for you.
And that's free. That's something
That's
you can just,
free.
That's
Absolutely free.
fascinating.
We're wanting to connect up the hearts around the globe.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to do that. I'm
Okay.
actually I'm going to have my family do it as well, because when I went
right.
home and explained it, they kind of shake their heads and say, yeah, you're into this ethereal stuff. So it sort of dropped out of that. And I said, well, I'll just have my own experience with this.
Right.
Because I don't think you can tell somebody else, you need to do this. I think it's a decision that they have to come to and say, you know, I recognize there's patterns that seem to interrupt my goals and my desires here. What can I do to fix that?
Yeah, it only really works if you're choosing to have a session. Otherwise, actually,
Right.
the sessions don't go anywhere.
Which is the same as
Like forcing
other
your husband to
techniques.
come see me won't
Yeah.
work.
I'm here because my wife said I had to.
Yeah, you have to want to shift or to look at it, to look at the challenge and find out what your heart wants.
Now, have you personally had anybody come in and say, hey, I went to that website and this is what I found, I want you to help me with that? I mean, do they bring that to you, or have you had that happen?
I don't recall having that happen so far. So part of it is just getting the word out there that they have that possibility
Right.
to go and do some of these sessions for themselves before they come see me, or just to check it out for sure.
Well, I can see that might be an interest from the audience. Go there, see if you can get the information that might, pique your interest a little bit more. And I'm sure it's not the same as having a session, because I know your ability to help me had to do with some of my responses and how you interpret that. So it's a little bit different than just going to an app and that sort of thing. But
Yeah, the beauty is that when there's more than one heart together, all hearts are listening. So it's like my heart is also listening to your heart and bringing in all of the vast intelligence as well. And we're actually tapping into a field. So it's like when one or more are gathered together,
Right. Yeah.
So it's that kind of energy that builds with the heart.
Oh, that's really great. Any parting words? Anything you would like to have our audience go home with tonight?
I actually would love to tell them that I do individual sessions in person, but I also do it by phone and Skype, and they're equally as powerful. And I also do group healing circles.
Wow.
Where we use the process as a group to see how we want to shift and heal what's happening for ourselves, for our community, and for the planet.
Wow. Well, thank you for your work. I appreciate your help personally, and also for my audience, who I know is going to want to contact you and get more information about how to help themselves and their families. And thank you again for tuning in to Health Matters. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.